Miss Ivelisse Porroa-Garcia, class of 2016. And she is the Director of Government Affairs at Thorough Strategies, where she represents Fortune 500 multinational corporation, helping them navigate the federal government. Previously, she worked for 6 years on Capitol Hill, ultimately serving as the policy director for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the president of the Congressional Hispanic Staff Association. And she graduated from UCLA with a BA in political science. So yeah, I am honored to be chatting with you all tonight, and I'm looking forward to learning so much from you. All right, so up next, I want to mention a special guest that we have from the UCLA Career Center. And in all these career panels, we like to give some time to the Career Center to talk about the resources they have that may help propel you into a career in government or public service. So with us today is Timothy Mar. He is the Industry Relations Manager for the Career Center, and he's a representative for government, nonprofit, and education. So he is the person to go to if you have any interest in those fields. So yeah, I will hand it over to Timothy Mar, who is going to tell you about the UCLA Career Center's resources for a moment.
Great, thank you, Carlos, and thank you everyone for having me here. Really excited to be here. So I'll try to go through this quickly, but not too fast, so you skip over, but I'll make sure to put the things in the chat as well. So my name is Timothy Mar. I go by Tim, and I'm one of the industry relations managers. And like Carlos said, I work with our government and nonprofit and education industry. So any employers that are looking to recruit UCLA students in those from those industries, I'll work with them on their recruiting needs and how we can best serve our UCLA students. So the Career Center offers a great number of services to help students, not just with finding a job, but also just figuring out their career and kind of answering all those questions along the way. So whether it's a career in government or public service or something else, that's what we're here to do. We serve all students from first years all the way up through PhDs. So we are truly here to serve every student on campus. So just kind of going over some of the services that are available to us. First, make sure to check out our website, which is career.ucla.edu. That's where you're going to find a lot of the information and find out about our services. I'm going to drop it here in the chat. That's our homepage there. What we're often known for is our job listings. So we use a system called Handshake to manage all of our job listings. So any employer that's looking to hire a UCLA student, they're going to post their positions there. Positions are updated daily. So we have thousands and thousands of positions on there. Just to give you an idea of the types of opportunities that are on Handshake right now, by industry, just if we're looking at government types of positions, there are over 1,600 full-time jobs and over 300 internships posted. These are all paid opportunities. If we're talking about just in California, there's over 600 jobs and over 60 internships. In Los Angeles, over 160 positions, full-time positions currently listed. And again, these are always updated daily, so these numbers will always change. We vet every position that comes through, so we make sure that these are legitimate opportunities. So definitely, if you are looking for opportunities, whether they're full-time or internships, make sure to check out Handshake and see what's available, and always keep checking to see what comes through. Like I said, they're always updated daily. So in addition to just kind of the job listings and kind of searching, we also offer direct one-on-one services. Things like career advising, where you can get one-on-one help. We have a team of career educators here to work with our students. It can be from anything from reviewing your cover letter, resume, answering, helping you with your interview, prepping you for an interview, helping you with your job search, decision making, career transitions, kind of anything that kind of runs that kind of career anything kind of related to like the career, career conversation, like that's what we're here for. In addition to that, we also put on workshops. Last month, we actually had an Inside Careers in Government panel. So we had a number of panelists come and talk about, very much like this program here, just kind of talking about, opportunities that are available in the government and public sector. So we have, not only with their services and not only with, the advising, we also put on career fairs and information sessions. So career fairs, of course, are large scale events. We're inviting employers to come and who are interested in recruiting UCLA students. We'll have more fairs coming up in the spring quarter. Each quarter we do have a number of fairs. Fall is usually the busiest time, but we'll also have a number of fairs coming up in spring. The next one will be on April 14th. We'll have more information on our website, and I'll be sure to drop all this information in our chat as well. And with a lot of these fairs, we do have a lot of government agencies, for example, are ready for the spring. We have the California State Auditor and the City of Los Angeles already registered. And of course, in the fall, as I mentioned before, when most of the heavy recruiting happens, we have quite a number of different agencies and government organizations who come out and recruit. So, for example, like the LA County, U.S. General Services Administration. Some of these are a couple of examples of some of the organizations that recruited here at UCLA earlier this year, excuse me. So that's kind of just a quick rundown of some of the services we offer. I just want to, before I kind of turn it back over to Carlos, I just want to point out a couple of programs that we have going on specifically that might be of specific interest to everyone here. The Career Center here, we run a Summer in Washington program. It's a UC-DC Summer in Washington, where students have the opportunity to live and work in Washington, DC for the summer and be able to live at the UC Washington Center. It's a housing complex owned by the University of California system. So students from all of different UC campuses are able to spend their summer there, spend the summer in Washington, DC, and be able to do internships, doing an internship in the Washington, D.C. area and live in UC housing. So, so if you are interested, kind of the program is we're kind of doing the recruitment right now. So if you are interested, please find out more information here. Great, thank you, Caesar, for dropping that in there for me. Yeah, and then and then if you are interested in, just real quickly, this is not through the Career Center, but if you're interested in living and working in Washington, D.C., but wanting to do it in the school year, there's also a Quarter in Washington program. So they're kind of like the sister program to us, but that happens during the school year. So I want to go ahead and share that with you too. So,
all right, thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing all those resources. That, a lot of the questions that we get often are, well, it's great, the panelists inspired us, like, now how do we get a job? So the Career Center is there to transform the inspiration into hopefully an actual position in government and public service. Up next is Colleen O'Brien, who will tell us briefly about how we're going to manage the chat and Q&A function during the panel.
Hi, everybody. Well, we just have the chat, which is the Q&A. So we're gonna take the questions as we go. So go ahead, and if you think of something right now, or if you have something later, let us know. Type it to us in the Q&A, and I think we're gonna either do it as we go or at the end. Just let me know whichever one works best for you. Thank you. Thank
you, Khalid. All right. So now we want to get started with our panelists, what everyone's been waiting for. And I'm going to start off with the first question. My first question is just to get to know them. And I find that on panels, people often want to know about the speakers on a more personal level. So, I told you about their bios. We have their very impressive professional bios. But what can you tell me about yourself as a person? And I'm going to start off with Jesse, if you can lead us off with that question.
First of all, I'm really delighted to be here on this panel today. I hope that you will gain some information about working for government or running for elected office. I was born in Mexico, in Jalisco, and I came to the US when I was 7 years old because my mom passed away and I came to live with my sister. We lived in West LA, right by Sawtelle and Santa Monica Boulevard, so we were close to UCLA. And from the very beginning, I always dreamed that I would one day come to UCLA and study here. And at some point, I went to a Catholic seminary, and that's where my grades went from a C average to an A average. And that's where I decided that I was going to be focusing more on going to UCLA. And when I left the seminary, I went back to Venice High School, which is where I grew up after we bought a house there. And my counselor basically discouraged me. He said, you shouldn't, go to a vocational school. Out of frustration, I quit, joined the Army. And the first things I did, I got my GED. And then I wrote Venice High, asked, what do I need to get my high school diploma? And they said, you need government. So I took government, University of Maryland. And that was, that was my way of making my way up back to where, for dropping out of high school. Well, I served in the Army for about 8 years. Most notably, outside of my work, I was involved with a Latino Federation of Latino American clubs in Europe. And we started with a few clubs in different military bases, and we ended up with 42. Our biggest achievement was getting the U.S. government military to stop buying grapes during the grape strike with Cesar Chavez. So we supported him on that. And then getting a lot of Latino products to the commissaries on the basis. And basically at UCLA, I was involved with Mecha, I was involved with La Gente. I was editor of 2 years of La Gente. And then I was editor of the Daily Bruin for 1 year. And I was also the senior coordinator for the partnership program, which is an outreach program to Latino and underrepresented students. That's basically it.
Thank you, Jesse. Same question to you, Magali.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Magali Limeta, and it's so nice to be here. I was born and raised in the Bay Area. That's why, as you can see, my background is a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm the proud daughter of immigrant parents from Oaxaca, Mexico. Growing up, I was one of the very few Latinas in all of my classes. But when it came to applying for colleges, I knew that I was going to go to college. I just didn't know how I was going to get there, right? I thought that I was on the trajectory to apply to a UC until my senior year. My counselor said that I didn't have the math requirement to enter UC or to apply to UC. And so when I asked to make up the credits at a community college, she said it was too late. I ended up attending Santa Rosa Junior College before transferring to UCLA in the fall of 2010. And so I was a transfer student. I got very involved. I knew exactly what I wanted to do at UCLA. I had been engaged in government clubs at the JC. And so at UCLA, I knew that I wanted to get involved with USAC, with the Bruin Democrats, that I wanted to collaborate with the admissions to increase more Latinos. And so that is kind of how I started my journey in public service. And that's how I got involved with ULA, because UCLA did so much for me that I want to make sure that other students have the tools and resources to be empowered and have a different experience.
Thank you, Magali. Same question for Ivelisse.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Ivelisse Porroa. I was born and raised in Lima, Peru. I went to law school over there, and when the opportunity to immigrate to the United States presented itself, I took it with no hesitation. I thought that I could be a lawyer here, but unfortunately, the legal systems are so different that nothing that I had studied transferred here, so I had to start from scratch. So when I was at UCLA, I picked the closest thing, political science. And then I learned about politics and the federal government, and I fell in love with, federalism, separation of powers and checks and balances and concepts that were so foreign to me coming from a whole different country. So eventually I did get involved in USAC as well, in the office of different positions in USAC. And then I learned about the quarter in Washington, D.C. program. I applied and I ended up interning in the office of Senator Barbara Boxer. And the next step for me was to get a job in her Los Angeles office. So that allowed me to also move to Washington, D.C. eventually, where I became legislative correspondent for the office of Congressman Raul Ruiz. I actually became very close to him as he was running for the first time against Mary Bono Mac, which is the back then it was the Palm Springs Palm Desert, district. So, and he also went to UCLA. So he was a mentor to me, and it was such a natural fit to work in his office. And 6 years later, I immigrated my family from Peru because the pandemic took an economic hit in all of us. So immigrated my whole family, my mom and my siblings. So I currently live with them. They're twins. They're 10 years old. It's a boy and a girl. And that also, requires more responsibility, more financial responsibility. So I looked into moving to the private sector. So currently I'm a lobbyist. I'm a director of government affairs. So I represent different firms in the telecommunication and retail space. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Thank you, Ivelisse. Since you went last, you're going to go first for the next question. You get to stick around. So my next question is whether it was obvious to you from day one at UCLA that you wanted to work in public service. If yes, how? If it was not immediately obvious, why and how did you get there?
I knew that I wanted to work for federal government right after my first political science class. And again, it was, how when people that are born and raised in the United States have a strong interest in the Middle East and they specialize in the Middle East or in some parts of the country. To me, coming from Peru, the United States was the part of the world that I was fixated on. So, and I wanted to study and I wanted to learn the history. I felt like I had a lot of catching up to do. So the more I learned about, history, American politics, my concentration was in American government. So it was such a natural fit that I always knew that I wanted to do the quarter in Washington, D.C. program. In fact, I had learned about it when I was researching UCLA, because I also got into Berkeley and I ended up choosing UCLA for that program specifically.
Thank you. Same question to you, Magali.
So I actually have always known that I wanted to be in public service and pay it forward. When you look at our elected officials, it's not diverse, right? But where do policies get created, right? Politicians create our policies. When I was at student in 2011, 2012, the state wanted to, the UC Regents wanted to increase our tuition by 12%. So with USAC and other elected officials who were pro-students fought against that. We pushed against that. We talked at UC Regents meetings. We talked with USAC members to put more pressure, right? Like our UC student representatives. And yeah, I was protesting when USAC Regents were having their meeting at UCLA. At the end of that year, the summer of 2012, all our student activism worked because they did not increase tuition that year. And so what that taught me, what that experience was like, wow, when you put pressure at a body, great things can happen, right? So I think that's the moment where I realized, what else can we do as like more than just a student? And again, the same thing happened here I currently live in Marin County. and they were trying to close down 3 elementary schools. For you to understand, I live in a predominantly white affluent community. These 3 schools are the most diverse in my community, where one elementary school makes up 44% Latinx students. When they were trying to close down a school. And so basically, long story short, I mobilized an entire Latino neighborhood. I asked the parents to write in Spanish, and I was going to translate them or find someone to help me to translate them to basically submit to the school board. And so we put more pressure on the school board members not to close down in school, and we won. And I think that's what inspired me to run, to be an advocate for these 40% Latinx students. Currently, I'm the only Latina. I'm the only young person. And I think it's super important for us to have more people involved in the political process.
Thank you, Magali. Same question to you, Jesse.
Yes, well, when I left the Army, I left the Army on a Friday, and on a Monday I started as a freshman at UCLA, and I had no idea what I was getting into because I had been away from school for 8 years. So I had learned all my basic skills from high school, and it was a struggle. And plus, I was already involved with La Gente, and I was already involved with partnership. And so after my first year, I was already on academic probation, and they told me, they said, Jesse, if we recommend highly that you come to summer school. And I said, no, I said, I prefer not to do summer school. And I had to sign an agreement that if I didn't get at least a C average, I was going to be out. But what I had done is I was taking all the hard classes at once, and it was and because my skill level was basically aged. I had to start from scratch, and but the next year I was straight A's. I was straight A's in all my subjects. And what I did is I diversified my coursework better. I didn't know that I would ever work for government, particularly never for the State Department, because in my vision was I was going to come back to LA and make my career in Los Angeles. But little did I know that all the things that I did in the Army, I worked with the Latinos, soldiers and spouses, families, and I worked with the German community because I was the contact coordinator for the German American Friendship Program, and I organized events for the Germans and the Americans. And then I integrated all the Latino students that happened to be in Europe, in Germany at the time, and we had a lot of events together. So all those things kind of led up to me. And they always call me a friendship ambassador in Germany, and I try to do the same thing when I came to UCLA. I was shocked because in the Army, all the Latinos were close to each other, and at UCLA we had OLA, which is the Organization of Latin Americans, and we had MECHA, and they weren't necessarily on the same plane. And my goal was to basically align ourselves with all the Latinos, because we said, the more we are, the stronger we'll be, and the better we can represent our communities. And when I ended up going to Citibank after my MBA, and I was a vice president in credit policy. When one of my assistants told me about the State Department, he was applying. He had applied before and not made it, and he was applying again, and he applied and didn't make it, even though he had 2 masters. A bright guy, he couldn't get past the interview part. And I was selected. So I ended up going to the State Department instead of him. So he was my window into this career in the State Department. And so that was, and I remember when I left Citibank, my director at Citibank said, Jesse, you've always been our ambassador, so it only makes sense for you to be in the State Department. What I tell my friends is that being an ambassador is not a goal that we should strive for, because it's very difficult. First of all, you have to have mentorship. Second of all, you have to have all the key assignments, and you got to have people pulling for you. And for Latinos and Blacks and other underrepresented minorities and women, sometimes it's not that easy. Myself, I made it to the highest level, which is equivalent to a GS-15 in the Foreign Services FS1, Consular of Management Affairs. And that was a good career, even though in my heart I know that I had enough talent to make it further. But there's a little play, and we're changing that right now, because right now there's with President Biden, there's a lot of initiative for diversity, equity, and and inclusions. So I'm hoping that that will make the next generation of Latinos and Blacks and underrepresented groups to have a more equal opportunity to succeed in the State Department. I had a good career. I enjoyed it, and I never regret 1 minute of it. And I encourage people to consider that as an option.
That's a perfect segue, Jesse. And I'm gonna, if you don't mind, keep you here for the next question. So we want to dive into, what specifically you all have done in public service. So what type of work have you done in public service? What does a normal day look like? And what have been some of your proudest moments? And I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, the State Department, the management counselor is, I am the official representative, management representative to the ambassador. So my job is to manage the biggest staff in the embassy. For example, in Colombia, I think my staff was like 300 people. And you have American officers. Sometimes you have spouses who are hired as well. And then you have the local staff, which makes up a great part of your team. And our job is to provide the finance, the human resources, the general services, the facilities. We have to take care of all the facilities. So we do all the logistics for the embassy. And also we're the ones that go to the foreign ministry and have the relationship to make sure that we can import our goods from the US, personal goods as well as official stuff. And you have to have all your cars registered with the foreign ministry. There's a lot of issues that we in management are the ones that take the lead on. When I was in Jordan, we were helping with a peace treaty between Israel and Jordan, and my boss and I were always at the foreign ministry and royal protocol, and the ambassador couldn't understand why they prefer speaking to us instead of the political or the public affairs officers. We just had a good relationship with them. They trusted us, and my friend is African American. He became an ambassador later on, and so he was from a poor background, and so at the very end we ended up doing the visit for the President Clinton to the Middle East peace talks, and when I remember when I came in about 3 in the morning to the Jordanian tent to let them know that I was there, they applauded that we were there to support them, because they said, we never have worked with a U.S. president, the Israeli prime minister, and our king, in an event like this, so we need all the help we can get. So those are some of the things that you can do. The typical management officer has a lot of meetings, a lot of council meetings. There's a meeting with the ambassador. That's the country team meeting where all the senior people meet with the ambassador. That's once a week. Then you have your meeting with your senior supervisors and then with your other staff. So you can keep them, so everybody stays informed. We're the ones that send out all the SOPs about all the policies, all the personnel policies, all the financial policies, everything that has to do with administrating the embassy. And so with myself, I always had my door open for anybody that wanted to talk to me. I thought that was very important. And even though I personally was hurt by some evaluations that they were doing because I was just Mexican American, I never, ever did that to anybody that worked for me. I always took care of everybody, and that, for me, that's the important thing, that I'm not going to stoop, below and do something that's not ethical. And but basically, there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of things that you can. I was in Haiti after the earthquake, and that was a difficult situation because I was there 8 months after the earthquake, and it looked like the earthquake had happened that day, because nothing had been done to resolve the situations there on the ground. And our job was to replace all the housing for the U.S. Embassy. So those are the kinds of challenges that you get. You get to meet with a lot of the, from sometimes the ministers, the senators, the city council members. You meet with all these people depending on the issues that you have to discuss with them. So that gives you a lot of visibility. You meet a lot of prominent business people. One thing that I was really interested when I was I was acting deputy ambassador, and we had United Fruit Company, and they had left the country and didn't pay the workers the money that they were due on a severance pay. And it was a thrill for me to tell them, well, it's, you know, you got to pay it if you want to come back. And they did, $8 million.
Wow. Thank you, Jesse. Same question to you, Magali.
Okay, so I represent 7,500 students. That's the how big my district is. I help manage $115 million budget. Most importantly, I approve curriculum, approve teacher contracts, and staff contracts. But the most important thing, I guess, or the most important thing for me is to make sure that all students are being represented. So it just really depends on your schedule. I have a full-time job. And the school board meeting meets 2 times a month from 6 to 8. Of course, if there's a really big issue, the meeting can run till 9 or 10, sometimes 11 p.m., depending on how controversial is the issue. But I also like to do tour sites, right? Because it's super important to me what's happening on the ground. Like, I want to be able to talk to students, to parents. How are they happy with their education? How can we improve, right? And making sure that I'm advocating for everyone. And most importantly, I'm a Latina. I have 2 Latino brothers, making sure that I'm a voice for them. So last night, there was a vote on turf, like whether we wanted to replace like original grass or turf. I got a lot of emails from parents. So part of my job is also reading their emails. Do they want me to vote for this, right? It was very controversial because apparently there's like chemicals that are toxic for kids, and it's very not safe when you're playing for students. And I got this right before my 6 o'clock meeting, and I knew that I had to vote on this. And you know what? I was one of 2 people that said no, right? And I'm a newbie, right? And like the other trustees were like, no, we can't stop this. We've already done a lot of work. But for me, I couldn't walk out explaining to people why I said yes. And I was like, it doesn't matter that I'm going to be the only vote, but I have to do what's right, right? Because my constituents are saying, hold up, you need to do more research. So that's kind of part of the job. And you kind of can't be afraid of doing what you think is right for the student, right? It has its challenges, but it's very rewarding at the same time.
As a lifelong soccer player, I have strong thoughts on grass versus turf. We'll talk about them later. Same question to you, Ivelisse.
So I've held different positions on the Hill. A day as a staff assistant looks very different than a day as a policy director, but you know, you start from, and I'll go through each of them because it's important that I describe all of them. Essentially, as staff assistants, a day in my life then it was picking up a phone, answering to constituents' calls and registering their concerns and how they wanted the senator or the member of Congress to vote for them or not to vote for whatever initiative they opposed. It was a lot of recording their messages and putting them on, you know, a software and so on and so forth, but it's very clerical type of job. Legislative correspondents are the people that read the letters that you send to your member of Congress and they reply on their behalf. They write a letter. So I was writing different letters and doing a lot of research on different topics. I was in Congress when the sit down for gun control happened or gun violence prevention happened. So a lot of people were flooding the phones and sending a lot of letters about it. Same thing for initiatives like DACA or immigration. Legislative assistants are the people in Congress that write the actual legislation. So I was writing different bills and doing research and doing the formulation and the negotiation, the floor negotiation with leadership. So that meant involving Pelosi's staff, working with the Republican leadership as well, working with different chairmen and the leadership of and staff director of committees of jurisdiction. And congressional committees are the, you know, group of it's it's a group of members of Congress that take a closer look at certain different topics and legislation of certain specific topics. So we have like healthcare and energy and commerce. We have ways and means, that we have the appropriations and budget committee. So I had to work with all of them to basically make sure that the legislation that the congressman was wanting to champion, it was going to become law. And in that position, I passed about 15 pieces of legislation through the House of Representatives and 4 into public law. And as a policy director with the Congressional Hispanic Caucuses, members not only organize according to committees of jurisdiction, but they also organize according to caucuses, ideological caucuses, or ethnicity or racial-based caucuses. So we have the Congressional Black Caucus, we have the Congressional Asian and Pacific American Caucus, and we also have the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. There's many other caucuses, but my job as policy director was to make sure that I was shaping and influencing the stances that us and all of the members of the caucuses were going to take as a unit. Back then we had, and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, of course, is formed by all the Democrats that are Hispanic in Congress and the Senate. So back then it was formed by the 2 or 4 senators I think we had. It was Cortez Masto, Ben Ray Lujan, Bob Menendez, and Alex Padilla. And the 30-something members of Congress and the House of Representatives that were also of Hispanic descent. So it was a lot of making sure that I was registering all of these different members, because I not only had one boss, I had 30-something bosses, and I had to make sure that all of their initiatives were going to pass into law, and make sure that I was working with the administration and the Biden administration and different agencies in Homeland Security or agriculture, whatever else that they needed, and making sure that I was communicating that with the administration so that their priorities were, passing through. So that is pretty much what a day in the life of, congressional staffer looks like. It's a lot of work, it's a little thankless job. It's a lot of late nights and being caught up in late votes, and telling, members of Congress how to vote or how not to vote. As a lobbyist, what I do is, as I mentioned in the beginning, I helped I help different companies navigate the federal government. So a lot of the times people that work in these big corporations don't know how to, exercise their access to Congress. So that's when they hire people like me that have a lot of knowledge and a network in Congress and the Senate and the administration to make sure that they are, navigating and following the appropriate procedures per ethics. So that is pretty much what I do on a daily basis. I schedule meetings for my clients. I advise them on how to best approach certain topics whenever they have a crisis or crisis mitigation. I help them out in that way as well. A lot of my clients are, for example, companies like Disney, the Walt Disney World Company, Walmart, The Gap, which includes Banana Republic, Old Navy. And those are just a few names of the portfolio that I currently have in the retail, healthcare, and telecommunications portfolio. So it is one of my favorite clients is Televisa Univision. That I grew up watching Univision, and when I moved to the United States, I loved Univision, and I would watch all of this novelas. So I always tell them, like, you're one of my favorites. So, but essentially, like, companies like that have different priorities. For example, to push more initiatives in Spanish for their Spanish audience. So what I do is I help them connect with Congress so they can pay attention to these very important initiatives.
Thank you, Ivelisse. So next question is, actually, before I go to the next question, I have a reminder that if you have questions, if you can put them in the Q&A. So in the middle of your Zoom bar, there's a Q&A button. If you could drop them there, that would really help us because it helps us manage the questions. I see we already have a couple of really good questions, which we will get to in the chat. So yeah, please put them in the Q&A. You know, we see the ones in the chat, and we'll get to those. But if you can, please put them in the Q&A. So Ivelisse, next question is for you. I want to ask a question about finances because it rarely gets discussed in career panels, and it's one of the things that students and people always ask about. So the question is, how did you view a decision to work in public service in terms of finances? And I'm not asking about specific dollar amounts necessarily, but I'm curious about what are some of the economic advantages or disadvantages of working in public service.
So at the federal government, what I mean by federal government, not necessarily agency, but just Congress, Senate, and the House of Representatives, the salary is very low. It's public service, and a lot of the time, young staffers are driving their members of Congress, so they incur into additional debt to buy a car so they can qualify for certain jobs. So a lot of the times they have to have another job or a side gig to be able to pay rent in very expensive DC. So when I was in Congress, the minimum salary was $28K, and it was horrible because a lot of the times, like, you don't have even to eat, right? And recently, there has been a movement for congressional staffers to unionize and to exercise more of their organizing power. And thankfully, congressional leadership heard the need for congressional staffers to earn more. So they raised the lowest to $45,000 a year, which is, it's not a lot, but it is better than 28 for a minimum. So if you were to begin as a staff assistant, that's what you would be making in most offices. Internships used to be unpaid. Now they are mostly paid. Ranges for a legislative correspondent, it's between 50 and 60 something, depending on whether you work for the Senate or the House of Representatives. The Senate pays a little bit higher because they're under the assumption that you represent all the people of the state, not just a district. Not that it's less, but it's just less population wise. And then for a legislative assistant, the range is mostly between 50 or 60 something and probably around 65 or 70 if you are very lucky. It depends also on whether you have a graduate degree or a JD, but a lot of the times on the House side, on the House of Representatives, I've had interns that had a JD, I've had interns that had a master's or a PhD, and it's just that the experience that you need to be able to pass laws and to play the game of Congress, so to speak, it's one that you acquire starting from the bottom, unfortunately. So there has been a movement recently to try to admit more people at higher levels, that have more qualifications, more educational qualifications. But anyway, I'm deviating here. But now for a director role, the salaries are between 70 something, 80 something, 90 something, depending on the member or the senator that you work for. Chiefs of staff, the maximum now it's $2,100 a year, which is more than members of Congress, which are capped at $175 a year. So it is, those are more or less the ranges in both chambers. The benefits are really good though, because once you get to hit 5 years, you have pension secured. And then you also get to have a student loan repayment program with your office. So each month the government, pays your monthly fee for your loan as long, and here's a catch, it's as long as the loan is with the Department of Education. So if it was a loan that you took from a bank or a private loan, then it's probably not going to qualify, but I would still recommend to talk to your, to the payroll office. So those are the advantages. If I had to do it all over again, I don't always tell people this, it would be a really complicated decision because I started making in the low 30s, and it set me back a lot, and I had to incur a lot of debt to be able to survive for many years, only because I really wanted to serve and again represent my community and be able to pay it forward and pay it back to this beautiful country that opened and welcomed me, opened so many opportunities and welcomed me with open arms, right? But at the end of the day, I had to be cognizant of the fact that I had a family to take care of now. I had kids to feed. So that just changed everything. And once you work in Congress for a certain amount of time and you get to grow your network, you get to sometimes even triple your salary when you go to the private sector. So that's always something that you should consider when you are putting in or earning your stripes or putting in your time in Congress or on the Senate side.
Thank you, Ivelisse. As a union side labor lawyer, I definitely appreciate the nod to the unionization of the staff members and their increased salaries. Same question to you, Magali.
Okay, so for serving, I get paid a stipend of $200 a month, right? That's not a lot of money. So you don't do it for the money, kind of like Ivelisse, like you just want to pay it forward. You want to make sure that students don't have the same experience as me, where they didn't know that I didn't meet the AG requirement, right? Like I want to make sure that kids know all of their options, whether it's going to a four-year state school, whether they want to enter the workforce. So that's kind of why I do it. You do get free healthcare. Of course, I opt out of that because I have insurance through my work. So I rather save that money to the school district. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of what you do. And there's also when I was running, when I thought, I was the only person that ran in my race, but I was willing to pay a stipend to my students because I wanted to actively get involved. Because sometimes when you run campaigns, it's all volunteer unless it's your campaign manager. And sometimes you pay the campaign manager $30,000 or $25,000, depending on how big your campaign is and how much money you were able to fundraise. So when you're in public service, you really don't do it for the money, but it's really rewarding to make sure when you think you're making an impact on the life of the next generation.
Thank you, Magali. I think both of you have highlighted some similarities with the legal profession too. Sometimes the government role is like a springboard to the next position that might be higher paying, but you have to have that government experience or that sort of, yeah. So there are some common themes there. Same question for you, Jesse.
All right. State Department pays. We're basically capped at the congressman's salary. So we get paid at the senior levels. I was getting paid at the top level, and then when we go overseas, we get free housing, and if we have kids, our kids get free education at the best schools in the world. They're called American schools, right? There's also like if you're living in Europe where it's more expensive than the US, they'll give you a cost of living allowance, which is to make the difference between what you would pay here for your basic goods and what you would pay over there. And then if you're in a differential country, which just means that it's a hardship country, like Haiti. When I was in Haiti, I made so much money that I maxed out at 200,000, and then they said next year we'll give you the rest. because it's only a 1-year assignment in Haiti, because you get a cost of living allowance because everything that you buy is expensive, because it's in Haiti, everything is brought from the US, so it's really expensive. And second, there's a differential, because it's difficult, and also there's danger pay because there's a lot of gangs. You heard about the missionaries getting kidnapped. Well, that happens all the time. So it's not. I mean, it's with us, we're safer because we understand, we know the locals know, they protect us in a way, and also we don't venture out by ourselves. We always go in groups, and that gives you a lot of security. I mean, basically, some people can live off their differentials and their cost of living and never touch their paycheck, right? And so they max out the Roth fund, the 501, and then they buy real estates in the U.S. or they rent. A lot of them rent, buy a home and then they rent it while they're overseas. It pays for itself by the time they retire. And the thing about the State Department is that that there's job stability, and the same thing with all the government. You have a job stability. I remember when I was at Citibank and I was coming one day to the Officers Club, and I met one of my colleagues, and I go, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Just got fired." So Citibank fired 9,000 employees in one day, and it was on a Friday. So normally they fire you on Friday. That way you have the whole weekend to cry about it. But not only do they fire you, but they escort you out of your office. They watch you while you pick up your personal goods. They do that in your offices too, right, Ivelisse? Yeah. And so it's very, they're very protective about that. But all the government agencies have career opportunities. USAjobs.gov gives you all of the opportunities in the whole country. Okay, the State Department is not only overseas. We also run the passport agency. So whenever you get a U.S. passport, it comes to the State Department. So we have offices like in San Diego, Los Angeles, Boston, and different cities. So some people want to be civil service employees and they don't want to go overseas. So they want to live in the U.S. They can also join the civil service, either work in Washington or work in one of the passport agencies. So that's a different career than just basically, if you can work for the federal government anywhere in the country. There's 38, 40 agencies that hire, and they're always looking for good qualified people. The salary range starts around $54,000 for a general service, for a foreign service officer at the grade 5 level, and then it goes up to, like I said, $175,000, and that's basic pay, and like I said, it's limited to the congressional pay. We can't make more than a congressperson. I did well.
Don't mind me, Jesse. I was applying for a job at the State Department while you spoke. You sold me. you had me at free housing.
The majority, I would say, about 10% of all the Foreign Service officers are lawyers. That's the largest of any one degree. Yeah.
Flying as we speak. Okay. The last question is for you, Jesse. It's for everyone, but
okay.
You're going to go first. What is some advice you would give to a younger you or a younger student who is thinking about a career in public service?
I would say to really focus on what agency you wanted to work for, and what is your criteria? Are you looking for local? You want to be hired in Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, anywhere. You can work for the United Nations. There's a lot of things you can do for the government. You can be a DEA agent, you can be Border Patrol, you can be Labor Department, there's, Department of Justice if you're an attorney, there's all kinds of opportunities in the government. And what you need to really do is focus on what you want and then get into their career webpage and find out what kind of internships, and then you focus on paid internships if you need the money. Some people, their parents are fun, they said, hey, take it, we'll pay it for you. But some kids don't have that opportunity. Their parents don't have the funds for them to go to Washington and support them over there, or New York, which is more expensive. So I would say, really get acquainted with what you have, and if you do an internship, or you request a tour or visit or something, that sometimes students go to Washington and then they visit the State Department, and then they're, so they get, and some of the officers talk to them and tell them, people, particularly public affairs, will tell them about careers in the State Department, what the State Department does and all that stuff. But all the government agencies have similar programs. Department of Commerce, just think of any government agency, and they have programs that are always looking for talent, we say, yeah, maybe I could have made more money outside of the State Department, but the experience and the people that you meet in the countries, I visited 54 countries, I would have never done that if I had stayed at Citibank, I just knew that was for me. I always, having been in Germany when I was in the Army, I knew that I like, Europe, and and I picked good areas. I picked Portugal and Brazil. They both speak Portuguese, and I had to learn Portuguese. I picked Haiti because Haiti was a place that needed somebody who wasn't afraid to get their hands dirty. With me, I always, when I went to any meetings, 98-degree heat and 90% humidity, and I was always wearing a suit. And then they would say, and they would say, "Why are you wearing a suit, Mr. Coronado?" I said, "Because I'm representing the U.S. government." And you have to do that with pride. You can't just be sloppy. Wear khakis and stuff.
I can relate. I wear a suit in the summer in Los Angeles.
I know.
Same question to you, Magali.
Sorry, I got excited. I was like, wait, I almost forgot the question. I got excited with Jesse's answer. But I would say talk to a lot of people, get involved at UCLA if you're not involved yet. I was involved with Bruin Democrats. I got a chance to meet President Bill Clinton and Jerry Brown, or our Governor Jerry Brown, when he was campaigning. So they came to UCLA, and the Bruin Democrats had access, USAC. Because you get a chance through the external vice president to go to DC or conferences around the nation and really meet other students who are very active on campus, especially in the political process. So that was really great. Still keep in touch with a lot of them, and I've had a few full circle moments. Assemblymember Matt Haney, when I was a student fighting to stop the tuition increase, he was actually the leader of like every student organization in the UC system, and now he's an elected official in Sacramento. So it's pretty cool. And if you guys don't know, Joelle Gamble, who was the external vice president my senior year, currently works for the Biden administration. So it's pretty awesome to see some of my friends that were very politically active do those things, because you don't know, right? Another thing that I would say is get involved with USAC, because there's different different offices. So you can get involved with the president's office, you can be involved with the internal and vice president offices. So there's something for everyone, but understanding your why, right? What is your why? And your why can change at every stage in your life. My why was very different 5 years ago than it is now. And just start networking with different people. After I'm done with my response, I'm going to drop different links of if you ever want to run for office, which I highly encourage everyone to think about, right? And then if you don't want to be, if you know that you're behind the scene, these organizations also help you how to be a campaign manager, how to be a finance treasurer. There are different roles in a campaign to get someone elected that shares the same values as you. And also feel free to connect with me, because I've been pretty involved for a very long time as a student activist. So I can connect you with different people, and here to really support the next generation of Bruin leaders. I'm
glad that several of you have highlighted your involvement in student government. I too was in student government. And even though it's not something that you would traditionally think about as far as something that is helpful, I know at least when I've hired and when I interview, I look at that as a positive trait. I look at people that can kind of demonstrate leadership potential, because that's a lot of what we do. Even if you're not doing actual leadership, leadership potential, leadership ability is very important. So I'm glad that several of you have highlighted your role as student leaders. Okay, and then back to Jesse, same question.
I was all tied up with Magali's. Didn't I answer that first? Because I spoke before her.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got excited too.
It's okay. I'll take it.
Ivelisse.
Yeah, but I did want to mention that if you want to make money, you work for the LA City Council. They're the highest paid.
True story.
So my advice would be, don't be afraid to network. I work with a lot of interns and fellows here from the UCDC Center. And a lot of the times they just come to me and say, well, I'm too shy, or I don't want to bug people. I don't want to follow up. Or people are too busy for me. People are going to be busy. We have busy lives. We have kids. We have a family. We work for the federal government. It doesn't matter. Your job is to follow up and follow up and follow up and just go for it, right? And don't be scared or don't be intimidated to just go on LinkedIn and send a message to someone that has a trajectory or a career trajectory that is appealing to you or that you would like to be when you grow up, right? It can be, you don't know where that can land. You don't know where that person can have the best intentions in the world. And again, make sure to follow up, right? Whatever mixer or event that you have, make sure to introduce yourself and practice your hi, I'm so and eye contact. And when you go to all of these different events, also have certain topics that you can touch on. So depending on, this is a funny example that I always bring up, but it's very true according to the culture of the person. So a lot of the times, unfortunately, politics is still a very white dominated, industry. So what I love to talk about when I'm around white people is the weather. I don't know, but they love it. They love the weather. They love talking about recipes for food, and they love talking about plans. Or restaurants. So I just try to talk about topics that are going to, just to break the ice, right? And that's what I would say. If I had to do it all over again, I would just be more aggressive about building my network from the very beginning, instead of being too shy or that I'm going to California nice, because you have to go get it. If you don't do it, we don't have parents that are, privileged enough to come from families and centuries of doctors and lawyers. We don't. So if we want a better generation, a better future for our own children, we have to make it happen ourselves.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think we could do a whole session on networking skills. Personally, if I have the opportunity, I like to, research people that I'm going to talk to. And, if they went to UCLA, you have an easy icebreaker. Oh, so, how was your time at UCLA? What was your favorite place to study? Things like that. Oftentimes you don't have the benefit of knowing anything about the person. So you have to go to, the weather, where you're at, favorite place to eat. My go-to is sports. I feel that anywhere I go, I can chat about whether, and even if it's their rivals, it gives you a conversation starter. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of tips for networking. All right, and so we're going to go to the Q&A questions, and for that, Colleen is going to lead us into those questions.
Okay, hi. I'll try to speed it up just because I know we're running out of time. This has been really great. I'm just going to throw out two of the kind of general questions, and then if you just want to pick, if every panelist just wants to pick one. So one thing that came up was some people were curious about what kinds of, say, areas they should be looking into in terms of what would be good studies for entering into one of these careers, I think, versus what some other people have talked about, just what kind of basic skills are good for being in these careers. And then there's also some questions about what kind of requirements are needed to go into these careers, such as, obviously, I know a lot of them have the background checks, some of them have psychological tests, and then people were curious about the work authorization. So whichever one that you feel like answering, that'd be great, because we probably are coming towards the end of time. So whoever wants to start, and that's pretty much all we will probably have time for. Thank you.
I can cover the immigration status one. I was actually a permanent resident when I started working for the Senate, and when I transitioned to the House of Representatives, I had to sign an affidavit saying that I was going to apply for citizenship once I became eligible. So I had no problem signing because I was, my heart was red, white, and blue anyway. So, so as long as you promise that you're going to be applying for citizenship, that's all good. And in fact, I think it's the immigration officers saw it very favorable that I was working for the federal government already. In terms of, I would say anything, there's people, my brother works for the Senate and he is an engineer by trade. He studied mechanical engineer in college in UC San Diego, and he, like, that somehow prepared him in multiple other different ways. I have friends that come from biomedicine. I have friends that come from, so you don't necessarily have to have a JD or be a lawyer or go and study political science to go and serve, your community in Congress.
So
It's
glad.
mostly about, sorry, just one more thing. It's mostly about your contacts, because wherever you go, you need to have someone on the inside of that office to elevate and flag your application, because these offices get thousands of resumes and applications. So if you're just blindly applying, you can get lucky, but it's always better to have someone on the inside to advocate for you. So that's where networking is very important.
I'm glad you clarified about the resident status. And as a lawyer, I'll tell you, always check the job description, because sometimes even if you're a U.S. citizen, you might not be eligible for a job. I can think of an example where, so I was born in the United States, and I'm eligible for dual citizenship, but for certain jobs that have a certain security clearance, they'll bounce your application, reject your application if you're a dual national. So, sometimes it's not even good enough to be a citizen. So always read the application and it'll tell you what the requirements are, whether it's resident, citizen, or even higher than that.
Yeah, government jobs generally require citizenship. In the rare cases where they don't find somebody qualified that's a U.S. citizen, they might bring somebody with a permanent residence, but that's very unusual. We had one guy who ended up being an ambassador, but he was Australian citizen when he was working with us on the Middle East peace talks, but he was a good friend of the President Clinton, so he got appointed, by the president, and because of his skills, mediation skills and everything. So he was there for a purpose. But in general, U.S. citizenship is, if you look at the USA.gov, most of the jobs have citizenship requirements.
Yeah.
And also, yeah. but if you're in the process, just wait your time and be productive in the meantime, until, just build your resume, keep on building it. Because the other thing too is, somebody asked about if you have, is there opportunities for higher education? Yeah, there are opportunities, but it's very competitive. It's very competitive once you get into the service that you want to, like if you want to go to the War College, in the State Department, we go to War College, or we go get our master's in public affairs at Princeton or something, right? But it's very competitive. You got to compete with everybody that's at your rank that wants that same position. So it's very, it's competitive, but it's not impossible, and if you don't get it one this year, maybe you get it next year. So, but you got to keep on, you got to keep on knocking on the door. Don't give up.
Yeah, for the school board or for elected office, you have to be a U.S. citizen and live in the community you're representing. You also have to go through a background check because you're dealing with students under the age of 18. But for campaign roles, you don't. So that's kind of the nice thing. And if you qualify, you can get a nice stipend depending on your role.
Yeah, I just want to share with you. This is the book that Carlos was talking about. This is called Inside a U.S. Embassy. And what it is, it tells you what every person at the U.S. Embassy does. The local hire, the spouse, the secretaries, they call them management assistants. We have nurses, we have doctors, We have, there's everything you can expect working there. And this book is really good because it talks to about everything. Anybody that wants to talk about this further, I'll be happy to talk with you. And if you decide that you're interested, then we have a diplomat in residence at Luskins on the 6th floor that can follow up with you if you're interested. But first, I would encourage you to, I put my Hotmail address up there. Contact me first and we'll have, we'll get some coffee and stuff and we can talk a little bit and you can get all your answers, that you want. I've been mentoring a lot of people since I left the department 10 years ago. So, and it's a joy for me because I really want more Latinos in the State Department and all of government to be accepted.
Jesse, I'm gonna email you after this.
I know. Good.
Everyone just
Alright,
blew up Jesse's email.
Okay, so that's awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry, we kind of have to cut the questions short. And if any of the panelists do want to put their email in the chat, there were a few people asking about that. Feel free to do that if you're comfortable doing that. Other than that, we're probably over time. And thank you so much, everyone. And I think Andres is going to close us out. Thank you.
I am. Thank you so much. I just want to thank again the panelists, Ivelisse, Magali, Jesse. We covered such broad ground in an entire sector about local government, national government, legislative, international, and it's just an honor and a pleasure to do that with UCLA Bruin alumni and listen to your success stories. I highly recommend folks to contact, or to take these panelists up on their offer to, get their emails and maybe, start a conversation with them. I think that came out definitely during the conversation that networking is key and, getting these questions answered. So if you didn't get your question answered, maybe if you could, just, stick your neck out there and just say hi to these panelists. And see if you can strike up a conversation. That's part of the mission of ULA, is to create these kinds of bonds and networks. I want to thank Carlos for such a great job moderating and getting through, again, such a broad area in such a short time. Also just a last word, thanking Tim Marr for his participation of the Career Center, reminding you that the links are up on the chat for the Career Center resources. And I also stuck in for alumni links on UCLA One, which is a great resource center for job postings, alumni events, career related events, and also folks that are alumni that have offered to, like these panelists have, mentor other Bruins. So I just wanted to mention those things. And thank you again on behalf of UCLA Latino Alumni Association, our panel, or our committee in particular, University Relations, of which Colleen is a member, and several people that were on the event. I saw Jonathan there, who have helped put this event together. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. I'll be on for a few more minutes. I know that Ivelisse is on Eastern time and, way past her bedtime. I'm getting close to mine as well. But so this ends the event, but I will be on a little bit longer if anybody wants to stick around and just chat and wrap up. So thank you. Good night for all those that have to leave.